I know how bad that sounds, and I'll start by admitting this is fully based on my feelings of betrayal, hurt, and disgust. I have an amazing daughter, Anna, 12 years old, and I'm married to the most amazing man, Thomas, in the world. My daughter and I have been living in Japan for the last 9 years, the home country of my husband. I returned to the UK for the first time since leaving this month to meet my nephew. My best friend Rachel and I have been best friends since we were 3 years old. She has always been my rock. Through everything, especially when I was pregnant with my daughter. As you can see, I gave birth to my daughter when I was 15. Her biological father, Drake, has had no interaction with either of us since the night I got pregnant, nor ever showed an interest until now. To address the elephant in the room, Drake raped me when I was 15 and he was 21. I come from a very religious family, as known as my father is a deacon. There was no option. However, I absolutely adore my daughter and do not equate her to that horrible experience. She saved me and I have spent every day loving her, thanks to a lot of support, therapy, and her just being the most loving little sweet peach out there. A few other things to note. She doesn't know the nature of her conception, as how the hell do you explain that to any child? Under any circumstances my husband adopted her? And she knows they're not related biologically, but they absolutely adore one another. Drake gave up all parental rights in a plea deal for a lesser sentence. Now, on to the main thing. I came back to the UK to meet my nephew, but booked to stay for a few weeks to visit my family and friends, but it was all a surprise. No one except my mum knew we were coming over. It was very fun and so lovely to see everyone's shock and surprise. My daughter is having the best time with her aunts, and they're all so excited to see her in person. I decided to also surprise Rachel, turning up at her house. Ringing the doorbell and seeing the man who raped me was definitely the last thing I was expecting. I assumed by some twisted and cruel coincidence that I got the address wrong, but then Rachel comes to the door calling him babe. It honestly felt like a horrible cliched teen movie where the main protagonist caught her best friend and boyfriend together. I knew she was seeing someone, but said that she wouldn't let me meet them until it was in person. She's my best friend. I had no reason not to trust her. I know that makes me stupid as hell, but I just never could have thought she'd do this. It's been 3 days since then, and she has been blowing up my phone, begging to talk. I finally gave in because, as established above, I'm a moron. She said she was sorry for how I found out about them, and if I could forgive her for falling in love with my ex, which not only pissed me off, but also my husband, who knows everything this whole ordeal put me through. I cut her off, saying I couldn't have this conversation, especially since my daughter was in the room. And she replied saying something like, well, she'll have to find out about the wedding soon for dress fittings. I asked her what she meant, because no way did I hear that correctly, and she said that as her soon-to-be stepmom, she wants her as the flower girl, as we have always said since we were growing up that our kids would be flower girl, ring bearer. I told her in absolutely no way, shape, or form would my daughter be attending that wedding. She said I was being petty and jealous and that I can't stop her real dad from being a part of her life. We've not spoken since this morning on the call, but I'm already receiving messages from our mutual friends saying that I've caused her to break down and ruined her wedding. But I genuinely believe I am not only morally right, but also legally. So I'm putting my most personal story online and asking you, am I the a-hole? Top comments a commenter, not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. I hope to God that this is a fake post because that is messed up beyond belief. She is not your friend. Run back to Japan. Somebody said, I am so sorry that this is happening to you. I cannot imagine the hurt that you are experiencing right now. Cut her off. She is not your friend. No friend would marry their friend's abuser. He is not your daughter's dad, not morally, not ethically, not in any way, shape, or form. They are not a part of your life. Run away from them as far as you can. That is messed up. Original poster replied, luckily we're only here for another 9 days. I'm checking in with a lawyer friend of mine regarding the legality because I do not want this man even close to my daughter. Somebody said, take your daughter and run. Your deranged ex-friend will try and talk to her one-on-one and possibly try to get your rapist to meet your child, and you do not want the fallout. Consult a lawyer as soon as possible. Don't let your daughter out of your and your husband's sight and fly back to Japan as soon as possible. You're so much not the a-hole. Cut all ties with this woman and your other friends who can't seem to understand why you wouldn't want contact. Sending you hugs. This is an extremely hard situation. One day later, just to prevent any disappointment, this isn't a proper update, but more so a post for more information. With a little update at the end, you can skip to that if you want. Firstly, thank you to those who took time to assure me that I'm not in fact crazy for believing myself to be in the right. Secondly, to those saying this is fake, please manifest that harder so I wake up from this nightmare. Thirdly, my bad for the title. I also would have taken it as my best friend marrying her own dad. Answers to questions I've seen, received. Moving to Japan at 18, I am in a very lucky and privileged position to have an uncle who moved to Japan following his deployment in the Navy many a year ago. Additionally, my parents wanted me to finish high school in sixth form before shipping me off to the other side of the world to avoid judgment from the community. If they could have sent me to Neptune, they would have. Plea deal. I use this term as it is more commonly known. But if you want an accurate depiction of what happened, I'll do my best to explain. But I am A, not a lawyer, and B, talking about a period of my life I do my best to forget. Drake was charged with the statutory G-rape of a minor, which is a Category 1 for harm. Because it resulted in a pregnancy, it was also considered a Category B for culpability, because it wasn't premeditated and was played off if the age of consent was lower, this wouldn't be an issue type of thing. There are no plea deals in the UK, but there are plea bargains which are used to encourage people to plead guilt, so there is no trial, or shorter trial if it's already began, through offering lesser charges or reduced sentences. There was other factors involved. He pleaded guilty, had no previous arrests or convictions, had a letter from a psychiatrist saying that he lacked maturity due to some disorder, and he showed remorse during the hearing. Because of this, his charge was reduced to a Category 2 harm and Category B culpability case, sentenced to 5 years in prison, placed on the SEG offenders register until he was notified of being removed. He served around 5 years of that sentence before being released and was on the SAG offenders register until last year sometime. Because a review showed he had changed or something, I'm not really sure, my friend explained it to me today, but we're like 3 rows down the grapevine at this point, so take that with a pinch of salt. 3. Deacons. There are around 738 active deacons in the UK currently. My father is not one of them. Hasn't been since 2019, as he has been living in the US looking after my grandmother. Not that I have to explain, but currently only 2 of my 4 sisters live in the UK, with another living in Sweden to study and another living in the US. I recognize completely the privilege we have to live all over the world. If this means you think I'm lying, then I repeat, please keep manifesting that so I no longer have to deal with this. 4. I am many things, but my daughter is my whole world, and I will do anything to protect her. I was not on here to see if I should allow her to go to the wedding. I had already decided that there was no chance in hell that was happening. Don't call me a bad mother. Everything I have done has been what I believe to be in her best interest. 5. My best friend was the first person I told about what Drake done to me. It was her and her mom who took me to the police station. It was her who sat with me crying in the school toilets when I was being sick. It was her who watched all the videos sent to me by the baby support class. I don't know what changed. She has been going through a lot, facing many issues through COVID, but nothing I can think to explain this change. Update. My husband has tried to change our flights, but due to the air traffic control issues in the UK, this hasn't been possible as of yet, but we will keep looking into it. I have contacted my lawyer. He says that there is no legal claim from their side, so that has eased me slightly, but I'm an overthinker, so my mind continues to rage on with all possible outcomes. With regards to talking to my daughter and explaining everything, she isn't completely in the dark over the circumstances. She knows it was a bad situation, and whenever she has asked questions regarding her paternity, I've done my best to explain to her without outright stating, "You were a product of grape," because I don't want her to ever question whether she is loved or wanted. She is going into that really vulnerable age, and I'm trying to be as sensitive as possible surrounding it. But my husband and I have decided that due to the circumstances, we need to tell her. I've already contacted my therapist, and she has arranged for a chat with a child psychologist. When we return, my daughter will then have the option of speaking with my husband or I present, or having sessions on her own. I've been dealing for years with my trauma, and it was selfish on my part to wait this long, but my childhood was taken away by this man, and I believed I was protecting her. But I now know I was protecting myself. Rachel's number has been blocked on all our phones, and she cannot reach us through social media either. For the time that we remain in the UK, she will never be without my husband, my mother, or myself. Thank you all for your words of support. My mind has been spinning nonstop, but I'll power through for my daughter. Edit. My friend's mother passed away in 2020 before she had ever mentioned a partner, but I know for a fact she wouldn't approve. She would have kicked her ass up and down the street. She was a wonderful woman, some commenters. Somebody said, "It sounds like your friend was never your friend." I wonder what her end game was. She didn't want to tell you who she was dating until she could tell you face to face, right? Did she just expect that you'd be understanding or something? And the whole, "I'm her stepmom and her father and I want her in the wedding, blah, blah, blah," is super delusional thinking. She either never believed you or she's let him completely manipulate the situation in her mind. Surely her mother doesn't support their relationship. Original poster replied, "Her mother unfortunately passed beginning of 2020. I know she absolutely would not have supported it though." Another commenter, "Are people really getting that desperate for a partner that they choose to be with a known child rapist? I can't even fathom how she even started to talk to him, let alone develop a relationship with him. It's just wild to me." Original poster replied, "If I take her account true of the partner she met through lockdown that she wouldn't let me meet, it was through Facebook. He reached out to her and she saw him in a new light. Honestly, I think back to some of our chats about her partner and just feel so stupid. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. I guess someone said, 'I am so sorry that you're dealing with this. This complete betrayal by your friend is just crazy.' I cannot fathom how she can look at that man that hurt you so horribly and think, 'Yep, that's the man for me.' Crazy. Have you talked to her mom? You mentioned her and her mom were there for you. I'd wonder if she is as crazy as her daughter or realizes how screwed up this is. I hope you can get home as soon as possible and put all of this behind you." Original poster replied, "I'm going to add this as an edit, but unfortunately her mom died in 2020, so it was before they reconnected. Is that the word to use? Update, hi there. I never thought I'd have to be one of those people doing an update on a Reddit thread, but here we are. Welcome back to what is hopefully the final update needed for this horrific experience. First of all, I want to thank you all again for your words of support and those reaching out to me privately and in the comments. I believe I've read most of them, but there was so many, I couldn't reply to all. Secondly, we're back in Japan. Home never felt so warm. We arrived back yesterday morning, my in-laws being godsends and picking us up at that awful hour. On to the full update and everything that is to come. My husband and I sat down with our daughter and explained that we'd be leaving early, and honestly, that was so difficult in itself that I almost backed out of explaining everything to her about Drake. But she is honestly the most amazing human in the world. It felt as if she was the one getting me through it. Her and I had the conversation as my husband fulfilled a promise to my brother-in-law to make his famous pad thai before we left. The conversation itself wasn't that bad. Turned out she was already privy to some information that it was assaulted related. My father, the delightful man that he is, explained last Christmas that some sins are easier to forgive, and I'm not exactly sure on the wording he used, but essentially warned her that my bastard childbirth was forgiven by God because it was forced upon me, but she needs to stay pure to be led into heaven. I had heard part of the conversation, but not the full thing. Got into an argument with him about the way he speaks to my child and how he's not to force his beliefs onto her, as I refuse to raise my daughter the same way we were raised. This is not an invitation to voice your religious beliefs, Chuck's opinions. You do you. No judgment here. Essentially, after his comment, her own very sneaky research, she put 2 and 2 together, matched my age, and concluded the nature of her conception without telling me. Obviously, for me to confirm it, that was a whole other thing. We both went through the 5 stages of grief in that short time. I apologize for keeping her in the dark, and this conversation will obviously continue throughout the years, but on her terms. She's a bright girl, she is very aware of things around her, and I know that she will go on to do amazing things. I'm also trying to prepare myself for any questions, arguments, or issues she brings to me. I expect that once we settle back home, there will be further emotions, and I'm willing to work through my own trauma in order to help her through her own. And my husband, he is the greatest support either of us could have. She has her consultation with the therapist on Thursday. She wants us all to go together, and then she can decide on what course she wants to take from then on out. She's just been catching up on her sleep yesterday and today, and without going into the details of what went down with Rachel, she understands not to reach out to her. And if she receives anything from her, to tell me or her dad straight away. She pushed for a few answers, but my husband, working his usual magic, promising her ice cream, encouraged her to settle for the very basic answer of, "Your mom and Rachel had a falling out and it's pretty bad." She's smart though, so that answer won't work for long, but it gives me time to discuss it with my own therapist and the child therapist. So we'll see where to go from here. I've had no communication with Rachel or anyone who reached out to me to complain that I ruined her wedding. One friend went as far as to confront me at the pharmacy on Friday, but luckily my sister was ready to fight and he backed off. No one knew we were leaving other than immediately family, so there was no hassle there. I truly hope that one day I'll understand what Rachel has done, what has happened to her and our former friendship, to lead to this, but alas, for now, it remains unknown. I truly hope this is the end of the saga, that we can start moving forward and begin my daughter's journey of recognizing she is not the product of a hateful and violent experience, but instead the product of love, beauty, and comfort given to her by her father and me. Sorry for the boring ending, but it's my life. So I'm not actually sorry as I'm over any type of drama, but thank you to those who cared and reached out. May none of you reading this ever feel this betrayal, hurt, or destruction, some commenters. Somebody said, "I'm so glad you are all back home safe, and that the talk with your daughter went as well as can be expected. You and your husband sound like you have a good handle on things." Your father truly is a piece of work. That he would say such vile things to a child, words completely fail me. Original poster replied, "I feel more upset with myself for ever allowing my daughter into that situation. My whole life was spent with him berating us, and I never understood how horrible it was until I heard him speak to her like that." A vile man indeed. Someone said, "My mother left our father because he beat her up several times and almost destroyed her once. She raised 2 kids by herself. It was hard, but she managed. Then one night, he came to the house and, because they were not divorced, forced her to make love because she was still his wife. She got pregnant and had to deal with the stigma of being a pregnant single mother in 1958. She divorced him as soon as she found out she was pregnant and had my little sister. He never knew about the baby, and he ended up in prison for armed robbery. He died of alcohol poisoning when he got out of jail. I don't know how or when my mother told my sister the truth, but she's 65 now and still has difficulty being a child of grape. She has had therapy and knows it's not her fault, but the trauma is there. She's been married to a wonderful man for over 40 years and has 2 amazing sons and 2 grandchildren, so she is very happy. I hope your daughter understands and has a wonderful life. Times have changed since my sister was born, so even with your father's terrible conversation, she has loving parents and you are all very lucky." Another commenter, "I'd have a conversation with your mom about the timing of Rachel's wedding and her assumptions that your child would be around for fittings, etc. Is there a chance that your mom actually did give Rachel a heads up, or at least a hint, that you'd be in town for a while around then? Because Rachel's whole attitude around this whole thing sounds like she expected your daughter to be there for fittings. She just expected to be able to control when and how you found out who she was engaged to. Traumatic as this whole thing was for you, it seems like Rachel expected to be able to bring the molester along to some public gathering and give you the news in front of a group of people for maximum trauma to you and drama for her to enjoy." Original poster replied, "My mum is very sweet. If anything but naive for still being married to my father, I truly doubt she'd do anything to hurt me, but especially my daughter." From my understanding, the comment was just a heat of the moment thing, because I wasn't supposed to find out until December that she was engaged and to whom she was engaged to. So I assume she was assuming that our promise from childhood to include each other's kids in our wedding was the reason for the comment. But honestly, the last week has really rocked my trust in people. But logically, I don't think my mum would have even known about the engagement as she's been in the US with my father until 2-ish weeks before my sister gave birth. But honestly, I think what we've realized is I honestly know nothing about my nearest and dearest